Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. Washington Post headline this morning, Trump administration proposes first rule on health care cost transparency. Joining me to discuss that first rule is Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar. Good morning, Secretary. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, Hugh, it's great to be with you again.
You know, it's always tough to keep people focused on notice and comment rulemaking because that kind of induces sleep when you say notice and comment rulemaking. But it should not induce sleep here because it's a pocketbook issue. What did HHS do yesterday?
So the president had his executive order where he called for greater transparency throughout the healthcare system, and I directed our Medicare agency to require that all hospitals in the United States level with the American people, tell them what the price of their products and services are, and also tell them what their negotiated discounts are under each insurance plan. So you'll know in advance, before you get a service, before you go to a hospital, what you're going to have to pay and what your insurance will pay.
Now, Secretary, where will they find that information? Will they be able to type in, for example, USC Keck Medical Center and get a list of prices for an MRI or a knee replacement? Is that how it's going to work, or is there going to be a HHS site?
No HHS site, I don't think. That's not our style. What we want to do is unleash this data and information for the American people. And so there are two big things that we're proposing in this rule. The first is that all of the data be available in its raw form in terms of the charges for their services as well as what the insurance company's negotiated discount is. So there, your IT vendors, consumer-centric companies that do apps and other tools for people and really know how people make decisions and can customize those resources, they could suck up that data and use that and make that available to people. But in addition, we're proposing to require that hospitals take the 300 most shoppable healthcare services, and they themselves disclose that information in a very customer-friendly format for people.
So you're expecting the data miners to go out there, take all the data that you're mandating be in the public domain, and package it in a way that, for example, you can compare an Uber cost of a ride to a Lyft cost of a ride to a cab card of a ride. You expect that to happen because of the fact that those services, if they exist and they will exist, will be able to charge for advertising, et cetera.
Well, I don't know about what their financial model will be, but these entities are a heck of a lot smarter about knowing what consumers and patients need and the information that they need in ways than the government does.
Okay, now the penalty for not complying is $300 per day. Pardon me if I say to you, a lot of hospital executives are going to say, I'd rather have the $300 a day fine, which is going to be, $100,000 over the course of the whatever it is. Maybe it's $1 million. I'm not sure. I don't do math, Secretary Azar. But it's not that much money for a big hospital. Do you think that's actually going to be a deterrent?
Well, I think hospitals are going to comply with requirements of Medicare if these become the final rules. I don't really focus as much on the penalty provisions. Folks they're going to need to comply with whatever the final rules end up being. I'm not focused so much on what the dollar amounts will be.
Yeah, it's about $1 million a year, and some of these big hospitals, that's a rounding error for some of these big hospitals. So you may have to revisit that in the notice and comment rulemaking part. Who is pushing back? Who doesn't like the rule? That often tells me where the rule is having its most effect.
Well, any entities that are profiting from the status quo are not going to want disruption of the status quo. So we've seen comments from hospitals and insurers who don't want the opaque system that they profit from disrupted. But here's what President Trump is saying. We have heard not what insurance companies and hospitals want, but what the American patient wants, which is the American patients are telling us we want to know what something costs before we have to go buy it. We want to tackle surprise billing. This is a fundamental step to protect what works in our healthcare system, protect Medicare, protect our private insurance, but fix what's broken and make it better, create a real market for healthcare where instead of quality going down and prices going up, the opposite happens like it does in every other part of this economy. Prices go down, quality goes up every year, and you can't have that without transparency of pricing information.
Now, you just mentioned the second thing on my list, quality. When you buy a car, if you go to CarPro or you go to any of the online services, yes, you get pricing material and pricing information, but you also get a sense of how the dealer treats you or how people are going to be dealt with if they're dealing one-on-one or through a service. They get quality control, ratings as well. What about the hospitals? Price doesn't tell us everything. Some hospitals have better doctors. Some hospitals have higher mortality rates. Some hospitals have higher error rates. Is that going to in any way fit into the analysis you expect to come out of the analytics company?
Absolutely it does. And in fact, part of the president's executive order is a requirement that we consolidate and simplify quality metrics to measure providers so that it's easier for patients to pick which providers are better in delivering quality outcomes. We have a lot of quality measures right now, Hugh, a lot of bureaucracy on reporting outcomes. We need to get that, after all the years of experience, we've got to get that more simplified and more consumer-friendly, and that's work that I'm leading right now across the U.S. government pursuant to the executive order.
Okay, so you've got the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services at work on this. They've got 60 days to come up with a final rule. At which point do you transition to phase 2, which is to go from hospitals to surgery centers and doctors?
So we've got the statutory authority here regarding hospitals. The next thing in the executive order that we need to tackle is insurance company disclosure. So that would be a rulemaking of HHS, the Labor Department, and the Treasury Department to say to insurance companies, you have this information and you have to provide it in advance to your patients. You know, whenever you go to the doctor, so I can regulate these hospital standard charges under statutory authority, but doctors, ambulatory surgical centers, all the other providers out there, when you go to them, within 30 days you get in the mail an explanation of benefits from your insurance company, and they tell you the service you got. They tell you the list price of that service. They tell you what the negotiated discount was under your insurance plan, and they tell you what you'll pay out of pocket. What we're saying is, give us that before we go to see the doctor. Tell us that information in advance. You just have to push the button a couple weeks earlier.
Now, the explanation of benefits, we've talked about this before, it is challenging for lawyers like you and me to read. And therefore, if you don't force them to adopt plain English, they're not going to work, whether they arrive before or after the procedure, because an explanation of benefits, EOB, I went through a bunch of them yesterday, and I just throw them away. I'll bet you 90% of Americans never read them, Mr. Secretary.
Well, part of the reason we don't read them is we get them after the fact, after we've already had to pay the bill, after we've already had the service. It's not as meaningful 30 days after you've gotten a procedure done to know what you already paid. It's better if we knew that before we went to see the doctor, what it's going to cost, what our negotiated discount is with our insurance plan, and what our out-of-pocket payment is expected to be.
Yeah, I'm not quarreling with you. It'd be better to get it earlier rather than later, but I hope your rulemaking goes to plain English as well. Talk to me a little bit about the culture of doctors, though, because if you're really going to make this work, you're going to have to get doctors to start considering price as opposed to convenience, admitting privileges, and their friendship networks. And the network effects of doctors is real. It's like the network effects of lawyers and the network effects of everyone else. How do you break the culture of the medical system so that it really begins to value price?
Well, I think first you have to have the information out there. Right now, it's no fault of doctors that there's no price information to compare and compete on the basis of, because the system doesn't have that out there or provide that. I think once we get this information out there and available, we'll see real price competition. You see that already in the spaces where they opt out of the insurance system. Look just at the provision of something like LASIK eye surgery, okay? That's a good example of how things could work in the system. When you actually compete based on price and quality, what has happened in that space? Every year prices go down, every year quality goes up. They compete for patients' business, and I think we'll see that from America's doctors. They want to deliver a high-quality service, but they're playing by the rules of the road right now. The rules of the road right now say, do more, get paid more. Get paid a flat fee. You could be the world's best doctor. You'll get paid the same amount as someone who just graduated from medical school. It's exactly the same. We've got to change to a system where we pay for quality and outcomes delivered, and that's part of the president's vision for healthcare, is completely transforming our healthcare system so it's personalized, affordable, patient-centric, has you, the patient, in control, treats you like a human being, not a number, and that's where transparency comes in. That's where empowering you with your own medical information through health information technology comes into play. All of these are steps that build towards you, the patient, being at the center of healthcare, not some government bureaucrat or insurance company.
Talk to me a little bit about the level and degree of the president's attentiveness to this particular issue.
Well, let me tell you, Hugh, as we were just coming on the air, my cell phone rang, and it was the President of the United States calling me about a health care issue. And I held him off because I need to talk to you, Hugh.
Oh, would you tell him that? Would you say he could call the show when you're a little bit later? Call him back and say, I'd be happy to talk to him right now. But what does he really care about pricing information? And does it come up at Cabinet?
Oh my goodness, Hugh, does the president care? He is passionate about ending surprise billing, passionate about transparency. Here's the directive the president gave me on transparency. He said, I want A-plus transparency. I want people in the driver's seat. I want all this information out there, and that's why I ordered the Medicare agency to go full A-plus transparency on this proposal and anything else that we're doing.
All right, Secretary Azar, always a pleasure to talk to you. Better call the president back. Tell him I said hello.
All right. Thank you, Hugh.
It's always kind of funny. Here's an interesting breaking story. The ASAP Rocky trial is underway in Sweden. You know, he's the rapper that I have been following, the hip-hop artist that I've been following. The president sent his principal hostage negotiator. Now, I know Robert C. O'Brien. Ambassador O'Brien is the presidential special envoy on hostage affairs. They call him the Speeha inside of Foggy Bottom. And I've known Robert, used to be my law partner when I practiced law, good guy. And now he's in Sweden. I'm just reading the story from the AFP, and I cannot believe that Sweden has put themselves in this position where they are being branded a hostage taker.